welcome back everyone to the Bitcoin Business Bureau. I'm your host as always, LitecoinLeader. Today we're going to talk about how to track Bitcoin on your own, how to keep a perspective of the big picture, and a couple of tools that I use. And we're going to go down the rainbow road, and let's start with that next.
Just a quick reminder that nothing in this video is considered financial advice. I am not your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Seek out your own advice and do your own diligence, do your own research.
So we want to talk about where Bitcoin is heading, but what I really want to share is some of the tools that I use and some of the things I've discovered over the years to have the big picture in mind. Now, one of those is what's called the Bitcoin rainbow chart. And what that basically shows is the price of Bitcoin over time in a logarithmic scale. And there's sort of zones between, well, it's the colors of the rainbow. So you look at the price all the way going back to, I think I'll go back to this other one. But here's an article that shows how to read this. And I liked it because it shows the halving every 4 years and then where we're at for targets. But I'm going to jump over to the next tab and show it a little bit broader. So again, this is where you can go to blockchaincenter.net, and I'll put this URL in the description. But what this shows is the price of Bitcoin versus time going back to 2012. It just maps it out. And this is a log scale. So instead of I'll just say 1 centimeter equals 1,000, and then 1 centimeter equals 2,000. What it really is that it goes from 100 and then the next, let's say it's an inch for 100, and another inch is 1,000, another inch is 10,000, another inch is 100,000. So every major division is a decade or a power of 10 instead of just 1. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, you're going 1, 10, 100, 1,000, so on. So this takes it back 8+ years. 3 halvings, and we see that the price of Bitcoin, typically around the halving, is at the lower part of the rainbow. That happened in 2012, that happened in 2016, and it happened again last year in October. So you're always in the green level or below. So that means you're relatively on the buy side of Bitcoin. If you were just using this chart and did nothing else but just said when it gets to green or blue, it's a buy. And when it gets to orange or red, you might want to take some profits. Again, not financial advice. But if you had followed that on this chart, you would have been very successful over the years. Because you would have maximized your value, like when you got into the red, and when you got to over 16,000, you said, time to tap out, and I'm going to take some profits. And then when it comes back to the blue, you buy some. And then you hold on, or you add to your position. And then here, today, we see that the local peak was, not quite 70,000, but then there's your 60s. So your 60,000, 63,000, and remember this is a European date, so that's April 12th. So even at that high price, the all-time high, we were only barely into the orange area, or we're still 2 divisions away from fully being in the red. We've only been in the red a couple of times. It happened in 2013-14 and again back in 2018. So that begs the question, where is the orange, where is the light red and dark red today? We're looking at 124 to 170, pushing up to, when you go out in time, if you went into next year, you're looking at 200,000. So let's say by the end of the year, we would get to, there we go, December 29th. So if we stayed in the orange, we would barely be touching 100,000. If we went up to the next level, I don't know why it jumped that much, the 133, and then one level up, chart's a little hard to, January 5th, 186,000. So you're looking at 99 to 186,000. That sounds like a huge range, but it's only a power of 2. It's a double. So if it was to double from where it is today in the 45 to 50 range, a double would put you at 90. And then, at 90, even today, you're still only in the orange. So this rainbow chart is a nice chart to use to keep a very, very high level perspective, like a 50,000 foot level perspective, zooming way out on the chart and just saying, okay, where are we at? We're in the middle of the road right now, middle of the rainbow. We're not in the red, we're not in the blue. Could we go to the blue? Yeah. Could we go to the red? Yeah. But again, this is using past performance to predict future results. And the saying is that past performance may not indicate or predict future results, or however the saying really goes. We're basically saying you don't know which way it's going to go, because we've been in the yellow and we've headed up, and we've been in the yellow and on the way down. So we're in the yellow right now. So let's turn to the chart real quick. And first, before I turn to the chart, and that's the third thing I'm going to do. The second thing I'm going to do is talk about the stock to flow, which I think many people have heard. If you haven't, you should be following. Hold on one second. I'll go find him. Okay, so the person you should be following on Twitter is PlanB, and he's at 100 trillion USD, and he does great analysis. He's used the stock to flow model, which has been used for other things, to predict or to try to show how the supply crunch for Bitcoin will impact the price in the future. So that's where you get that step function chart and these red and blue dots, and here's the example right here of the stock to flow. Stock to flow, the colors show how far you are or how close you are to a halving, and then it predicts based on, and you give the colored dots, and then the model kind of shows, okay, we should be seeing a supply crunch that pushes us up into along this line. So sometime in the 2021 to 2022 range, we should be floating at around $100,000. But we typically overshoot and then settle down. So that's happened a few times. So you get an overshoot and you settle down, overshoot, settle down, and so on. So that's what this chart shows. So this shows that we should be between 100 and 200,000 at some point this year, based on what the model says. Can we get there? So that's where we get to the last chart, and that is where this is the chart of Bitcoin. And what I've done is I've looked at, I think I've mentioned this before, but I just took a look at the big picture chart. This is the 1 year chart, the daily chart, and I drew a couple different lines on here. First, I said, what if this is a wave 1 of an Elliott wave, and this would be wave 2, coming down from the 64,000 down to the 29-30,000 range. And I put a fib extension on here. It's up to the 1.6. That takes us to 86,000. I also kind of eyeballed this, and I sort of see somewhat of a cup with handle. Now you can see other different patterns here too on the big picture. The problem with trying to see patterns is that you can see other things. So you can see sort of a head and shoulders here. Like there's the left shoulder, the head, and then sort of a right shoulder. Maybe not so much. But if you said that this was a cup with handle and you measure this according to a cup with handle, you go from 30,000 up to 53,000, which is the neckline of the cup. So you might want to add 23,000 or 74% from wherever it breaks out. So if I say this is going to break out from here, let's say take me up 74%. If I measure up 74% from the handle, that puts me right about here, or 83,000. Well, if you notice, the fib extension is 86,000. So 86,000, going back to the rainbow chart, 86,000 today. Well, I had 86,000 right in the orange range. So that's certainly well within reach. And the next fib extension would be, let's take a look. Next fib extension to the 2.6 is up here, which is at the 122,000, which, going back to the rainbow chart, that would put us in the next zone up, 125,000. That's in November. So it's all within attainable reach. The part that's not in this chart is the supply crunch, and we'll talk about that next. So there you have it. The Bitcoin chart, we use the rainbow road, the rainbow chart, which is the big picture, shows like 10 years on one range. One log scale to show you where we are relative to if we're high or in the red or low in the blue or green. So that's one indicator. But again, this is using past numbers to predict. Same thing like the charts I showed and the stock to flow. Stock to flow actually is more predictive than looking in the past. Charting and technical analysis is also very difficult to do because you try to see a pattern, but it may not be the right pattern because you may say, well, is that a cup with handle? Or is that a head and shoulders, or is it something else? But what's not on the charts is the supply shock. But what's on the charts is the supply shock. And that is the hard part to factor in. And the best analogy I came up with this morning of how to explain that is just like everybody has played as a kid a game like musical chairs. So imagine that, every so often as we played the game, a chair was removed. Well, now there's more of a mad scramble for those chairs. So imagine a game where you had, I don't know, let's say you started the game with 12 chairs and you had 13 kids. Maybe it's not so bad or so tough to beat one out of 12 or 13 to get to those chairs. But the next time, 4 chairs get removed. Now you've got 12 games. Normally the way you play the game, if you don't remember how to play the game, but you play music, they walk around the chairs, and then when music stops, you have to get a chair. Well, that's just fine and dandy until like it starts to get really, really competitive. But normally what happens, they remove 1 chair at a time. Now imagine if they remove 4 chairs at a time. So now you went, let's say you started the game with 13 people and you had 12 chairs. 12 out of 13, you have pretty good odds of getting a chair. Well, instead of the next round, you drop down to 11 chairs. What if you went down to 8 and you had 12 shooting for 8? Now you got 4 people you got to beat out. And then you go again, and then next time it's 8 shooting for 4. You can see how the supply shock really factors in. Because what really happens, like every year for 4 years of Bitcoin, you have 12 people and 12 chairs, and it's not so bad. But then the supply shock happens, and then maybe not everybody's trying to get a chair at that moment. But as soon as more people start to get involved and wanting to get in, there's less and less to get into. So that's where the supply shock of the halvening on those rainbow charts really tell you that, hey, there's going to be a shock in about 12 to 18 months where we're going to see an uptick from down the blue-green range all the way up to the high red, because people are like, "Ooh, I can't get to what I wanted." So now everybody who wants some is going to experience that supply issue, and when they go and try and get their Bitcoin, they can't, or that at least not the price that they want to spend, and they'll have to go up and up. So that's kind of the example, and that's not reflected on technical analysis very well anywhere. That's why the stock flow and the PlanB rainbow chart makes sense. So combining all those factors gives you an idea where we're heading. So where are we heading? Well, the halvening was almost 12 months ago. So supply shock should be kicking in. Plus, we know where the economy is heading right now. And with the mass production of US dollars, and considering that we have a deflationary asset in limited supply, I think we know where the general trend is in the big picture. So not financial advice, but the big picture, it seems to say Bitcoin is probably going to head up from here. So just wanted to share some of those tools, give you something to look at, something to consider for today. But that's enough for now. So I'm going to close the drawer on the bureau, and I'll see you next time.